Hello, hello. Here we are again. This is Biweekly cast number 55. Host is still the same. I'm Dima Malenko.
I'm Slava, and today we're going to talk about business meetings. If only we had a follow-up, but we don't. But there is a theme corner, which we do have.
Yes, let's go into the theme corner. So you probably have some updates on your winter of nucleus and whatever comes next after that.
You would expect that a theme that repeated itself would probably be quite stagnating and slow-paced, but actually this winter was a blast. Like, I'm so happy with the theme, and today we are recording actually on the first day of spring, and I'm at 0 inbox of tasks. Like, I've done all things I've planned for the first time in years. Don't have anything I have to do or I should do, and this is an amazing feeling, and I'm mostly grateful to this theme for making it happen.
Well, this is quite an achievement. So I'm saying that focusing on figuring out what's the most important for you and kind of removing everything else allowed you to really truly focus and complete the current stage of those things.
Like, you could call it like macro grooming.
Mm-hmm.
You basically chip off all the necessary stuff. I did have some time to complete some things that I didn't fully feel necessary, but once I gotten some extra space, I got the energy flowing and I could go through these things that were just dragging me down or I was procrastinating on. And I did manage to, like, for instance, video courses. Like, don't like recording videos of myself, which is counterintuitive because it's like 300 something
This is
episodes.
what we are doing right here.
But video courses are different in this regard. Like, you're a bit more artificial there because you have to be precise, clear. You don't want to edit too much. And usually it's a different kind of genre. Like, I'm more in this speaking kind of style rather than here is the truth.
Interesting. And in retrospect, looking back, what would you say that the thinking or working, quote unquote, on this theme allowed you to do differently compared? I would imagine that most of us generally try to focus on most important things and then we do not succeed in that quite as you have succeeded with getting to 0 tasks. What did you do differently, or how the theme helped you get there?
Because of the team, I managed to take 3 weeks off, which I haven't done in years. And when I came back, I felt kind of recalibrated. Like, I could definitely say no to a lot of stuff that was just like, when you take a week off, you kind of jump into the previous routines. When you take 2 weeks off, you can slow down, reconsider something. But after 3 weeks, like, that was exactly sufficient amount of time for me to be able to be more radical in terms of delegating some things, not jumping back into some kind of activities, and closing a number of projects that have been, or not fully closing, but maybe deciding to close. And they're maybe not closed yet, but they're on the way, and there are no more decisions to make around it. Like, the decision is made. We can just move on. And I believe that's one big thing. The other is talking more about the priorities for the company, for myself, at personal level, at business level. It required a lot of communication because you have to sync up and explain all these rapid, weird decisions that are happening. But after this communication is done, again, there is enough understanding and support from the others, and it's easier to move away from some kind of activities. For instance, I don't manage any products anymore. Like, I don't go to one-to-one meetings. I don't go to brainstorming sessions. Like, I'm not involved in product development, let's say, which is interesting.
It's different. Interesting. So it sounds like the long break allowed you to, like the way I'm reading it, allowed you to gain sort of outsider perspective on what's going on because you were disconnected for so much, and maybe also additionally it showed that, well, even if you are away and not immediately plugged into things, they don't break, they continue going forward smoothly. And you then probably you used theme and kind of themes, the whole framework, right, with reflection to leverage that outside perspective and kind of reformat how you work and what are the things that you choose to focus on.
Be very fair. New Year holidays is the low season for us, so like not many people were working, and it would be very unlikely something could be broken there, but still qualifies.
It works. Interesting. So after this overwhelming success, I guess what's next for you?
I had two thoughts in mind. After such overwhelming success, as you mentioned, I was considering taking a sprint of gap and not have anything for a few months, just chilling and enjoying the results of the previous one. Because I still have the macro theme for a year and for 3 years, and I thought maybe I shouldn't jump into the next one because first, it's probably not going to be as impactful and joyful. And I still changed my mind because there is one thing that I'll have to do anyway in terms of business and some personal activities, and that's a lot of communication. We are going to launch a few products. My team is launching, and I'm quite often the communicator of those in different communities. And a lot of things happening around the podcast, the Stratosphere. Some things are happening around my volunteering activities that I'm probably going to tell about a bit more. And I thought about sprint of communication at first, but then communication seemed very awkward, weird, and not really like, sounds just like talking. And I decided to change it into the sprint of connection, like connecting the right people, connecting the projects with the teams, connecting projects together, finding collaborations, engaging people to support and build an ambassador pool for Savvy. Like all these kind of things sound a lot like sprint of connections, and I can totally see how it might evolve into the summer of connection as well. Like it seems like a 6-month team, but I don't want to look too much forward here.
That's interesting. We'll be looking forward to hear from you about that. But it also sounds, in a sense, like somewhat natural expansion, sort of your previous theme, where you moved on to the kind of next level. So you started seeing kind of bigger things without being directly involved into them, and it's from a certain point of view, it's only logical for then start leveraging that to connect those bigger things in ways they were not connected previously, or in ways that were difficult to see if you were kind of within the soup of those things.
Moreover, it's going to be a very nice check whether my previous theme actually worked, if I'm not going to be soaked back into those things. We'll see.
Kind of a stress test. Awesome.
So, shall we go back to the actual topic of this episode from the Theme Corner?
Yes, and the way you put it in our notes, like a question, I'm like questioning, like, how bad is that really? Like, and what you put in the title I'm reading here is, "Will my next meeting fail?" It sounds like catchy title for a YouTube video. Maybe we can use it for ours.
Yeah, sure. Feel free. And that's actually what's on my mind for the past few months. I've been attending a lot of meetings at different companies. We're right now collaborating with a few tech companies, and I go to meetings of theirs. And to be fair, I'm not that impressed. Like I thought our meetings are not very effective, but from what I see out there, like gosh, I was unfair to my team. Like most stuff that we do, like the way people invite each other to the meetings, write agendas, do the follow-ups, is actually quite good. Like sometimes you have to change the perspective to appreciate things that are around you. The other point is that we are considering resetting our OKR meetings and our objectives and key results. This is the discussion around our goals, and we are looking for a new format to provide more context, to make better decisions, to make it more practical for different people, not just for a specific kind of person like me who created it first for myself, but also for the others. And the third thing is that I've been experimenting a lot with the one-to-one meetings that I've had. Like previously, I would just like everyone have a weekly or bi-weekly one-to-one with most of my direct subordinates and teammates and have these conversations, and they would just happen because they have to happen because we have this time, like let's talk about something. And I've been experimenting a lot with changing the format, like moving some things into the walks, making longer but less frequent meetings, and so on. So again, we'll see how it goes. But all these things bring us to the definition of a meeting. If you could do it by your own words, like in your own way, what is a business meeting for you?
Business meeting.
Yeah, like work related.
I'm now second guessing how definition for business meeting would be different from general definition of a meeting, but then I would probably go with something along the lines of meeting is definition. Failing. So it's basically an event when people get together to achieve some specific purpose
Yeah,
of
well,
that
like that's
interaction.
exactly my goal, my definition that I wrote there. That's when people get together with or without agenda, in person or online, doesn't really matter, but they want to achieve a goal. And usually this is one of two things most often. It's either to share the context, to ask something, to tell something, to exchange the ideas, or to decide on something. And these are two most popular kinds of meetings that you have. You can detailize them. You can make a gradation of 10 types of meetings, but in my world, they kind of get to let's decide on something or let's share what's happening, like status updates. And
yeah, and I agree with you that there is a spectrum, not just this kind of meeting versus that kind of meeting, but this thing in mind, would it be also fair to say that there are meetings with, say, high interaction between participants, like deciding on something with very engaged discussion, versus low interaction with or between participants, something like an FYI, purely sharing context kind of a meeting?
in my world, do hope FYI meetings are not happening anymore. Like they're just extinct and they are substituted to emails, videos, or any other kind of form of broadcasting, like our podcast. That's a conversation between you and me. We are sharing context. For everyone else, it's FYI. They can watch them whenever they like, if they feel necessary. They can engage or interact with us. They may not if they don't want to. We're totally fine here. That's what I feel about all hands meetings, ask me anything hours, and all this kind of old company or big group gathering to listen to one talking head or two talking heads or a number of talking heads. If possible, make it shorter. If possible, make it record it so people could just watch it whenever they like. If you can't, then you probably should come and have a discussion, meaningful exchange, or decide on something, which could be brainstorm, retrospective, or whatever kind of meeting you can imagine. I started thinking about some kind of materials or articles, and I was scrolling through 10 different. You want to get back to something?
But maybe like one thing you mentioned a little bit early, and thanks for noticing my nonverbal signals over here, mentioned about meetings not being effective, like when you observed them in other companies, or just observed them in general. How would we define effective meeting? So we defined what a business meeting is.
Yeah, and
what
then
is an effective business
both
meeting?
you and I agree that it's in your words to achieve a purpose, in my words to achieve a goal. Well, you don't.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So we are saying that we go with the assumption that every meeting has a purpose, and if that purpose is achieved, we consider this meeting to be effective.
Yep.
And if not, then maybe not so effective.
Let's say we come to make a decision. Instead, we share the context and discuss some things. It was a nice, meaningful discussion. This meeting was not effective because we actually came here to make a decision. If we came here to exchange the context, we did exchange the context. People feel enough, it's effective. People don't feel enough, probably it could have been better. And actually, as I was trying to expand this idea about not effective meetings, I started looking through the articles of like why meetings go wrong, what are the top 7 reasons, etc. And after 200 blog posts about this thing, I realized like, boy, this is the same list over and over and over again. And it's actually perfect that you didn't get to read it, because I'm sure you can tell me what's in there. Like that's not rocket science. We see it day to day. If you could just from the top of your mind name a few things, a few reasons why you think meetings go wrong.
I started sensing that it is going to go into some sort of a trap or ambush over here to test my professional capabilities. Oh, let's try. You have an article which is 7. I'll try to play.
These are actually 5. They just split some of those into sub levels.
Okay, maybe one would be not knowing or not defining the actual purpose or goal of the meeting, going into something, not knowing why you're going in there.
Yeah. Lack of preparation, no agenda, no goals, not communicated properly what's going to happen, not build up expectations, what's going to happen, like all these kind of things. And goal is very specifically because people can write an agenda, can prepare a lot of pre-reading materials, but still not explain why we are coming to this meeting.
So what? That's true. I'm not sure if your expanded definition of lack of purpose would include what I'm going to say next, but I'm going to say this anyway. So even if we have like not having purpose, like we covered this, you might have a purpose, but then the setup for the meeting for that specific purpose is wrong. Let's say you need to decide or discuss something and arrive at a decision, and you invite 20 people. It's not going to be effective. So the setup or the preparation, the format of the meeting is not fit for purpose for the goal that one puts forward for that meeting.
Yeah, that's also totally true. And I think it could be split into even two categories, like the people you invite or don't invite, and the format of the conversation, the discussion, online versus online, whiteboards, no whiteboards, lots of different things. Like you could use some standard frameworks like a brainstorming meeting or retrospective meeting or whatever name it meeting. And these could totally be inappropriate to your purpose that you defined or haven't defined. Look, point one.
Right. Exactly. So either format is not fit for purpose or people we invited are not helpful at achieving the goal of the meeting. That's number like sort of two and a half. Then what else was next is that the purpose of the meeting itself can be misplaced. It may be that you come to try to decide on something when people are clueless about the problem, or this is the first time they hear about it, or it's just too early to make that decision. So then it can be, even with all the prep in the world, it might be ineffective. Purpose does not feel the realities of the world.
I could say this is like a very meta issue when people don't feel their context, their reality, the needs, and they are not into something and they would like to find a quick solution. It can be broken at so many levels. And from defining the purpose to picking the format to sharing the materials and all the other things. So if I could pin one issue, that would be like the issue. But I think that that's a different kind of level here. That's generally like how deep is the person into the subject and how integrated into the system where this decision has to be made. That's a bit of a like out of meeting itself issue, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because like the previous two we discussed, they are caused by relations between elements of the meetings to themselves, and this one is relation of the meeting as a whole to the what's around it.
That's still like totally an issue, and probably a bigger issue than all the other that we are going to mention.
I agree with you. It is on a different plane for sure. Then I guess in the meeting itself, if the facilitation or the way the meeting itself is run is, for lack of a better word, ineffective, that doesn't allow the team or group to fulfill the purpose of the gathering, that would be a failure.
And I could probably suggest this split into two things here. It's the lack of focus, like when people just go off topic, they go sideways, they can't actually stick to the plan or focus on the goal or the purpose, and they're losing the track of it. And by the end of the meeting, like nothing is done because we kind of stopped thinking about why we came here and started discussing what just was happening in the process. And the other sub problem here is the pace of the meeting could be too slow or too fast. And if it's too slow, then you are not meeting the timeline and you can't achieve the purpose, even if the format was right, but you just didn't plan enough time, and it could have been 90 minutes instead of 45 minutes, and you would totally get what you wanted, but just didn't estimate the time properly, didn't plan all the discussions. Or on the opposite, like you plan just 15 minutes for a difficult decision, people don't get enough time to feel the context, and you can't come to the decision. So too fast or too slow, and many sub-levels here, like about engagement, about people getting bored or getting overexcited, conflicts, and lots of things happening around this issue.
This is something like the writing of the meeting is something that if even if you get everything else sort of right, this can allow the meeting to kind of go wrong in the end if not sufficient attention or flexibility is placed on the matter. Next one would be, I'm not sure, you may also say that this is a little bit meta or starts getting kind of meta-ish, is that depending on the goal, and especially when we establish that FYI meetings you rule out, if you want them to be email, not a meeting, then one would expect maybe tangible outputs or tangible change as a result of this meeting, which would require for quote unquote action items to be captured, communicated, and maybe clarified and agreed upon by the parties of the meeting. So even if everything else goes right, but we did not fix, now we do XYZ as a result of this meeting and hopefully follow up after that, then this whole meeting can be a waste of time.
Yeah. So basically, to sum it up, lack of follow-up, execution, and progress tracking on things that we agree on. Like we can have a very clear follow-up, but not agree on how often are we going to touch back, who is going to report, how it's going to happen, unless it's a regular thing. Like if it's a weekly, then everybody knows, and that could be an exception. But for most meetings, especially based around a decision, like, all right, we've decided we are not launching this. What does it mean for us? And it means a lot for everyone, and it's kind of hard to track because everyone goes and puts them into their own personal task lists, and there's no clear space where you can see the progress of this decision.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's actually pretty much it. Like we've nailed it. And these were like 100% of articles I've read. Like they all go around this, like setting the goal, preparing people, running the meeting, keeping it focused or keeping it fast or slow, and following it up. Not the rocket science, right?
Well, it sort of depends. It may be not the rocket science, but it can be a little bit of an art form of its own.
Yeah, but let's say we could totally see all of these mistakes happening on a weekly basis. Like everyone who listens to us probably has seen this mistake last week. At least one of those. Most likely 5 of those, sometimes even at the same meeting, all 5 of those.
Could be, yes.
And it doesn't really depend whether it's a startup or an enterprise. It doesn't really depend whether it's very structured or a very chaotic company. Like it happens all around. And it feels as if this issue is indestructible and unsolvable, and as if we can't learn from our mistakes. Like we know it's a mistake, we know what we should do, then we just plan another meeting and then it goes wrong. That's why I have this question in the title. So what are the chances, what's the probability of my next meeting not achieving the goal? And I think it's quite high, actually.
Not zero, right?
It's way higher than I wanted it to be.
I think, yeah, it's a little bit philosophical. There is it, with a strict definition of failure, setting the purpose or setting the goal and then hitting the goal in the end of the meeting. I think that the probability of failure can be relatively high because you are trying to pinpoint this exact thing, which with many moving parts like our chaotic brains and like whatever else that goes around it might be challenging. And from that point of view, I would probably agree that the probability of failure can be relatively high. But then if we relax the definition of success a little bit by saying it was a worthwhile expenditure of time on part of the participants, even if we maybe didn't hit the specific goal, it may still be a successful sort of meeting. If you maybe decided to close the project or the kind of complete something and then put it to a closure, but you discovered a kind of missing part in it and decide to fill the gap in the next week before the next attempt to close this thing, is a sort of success, even though it was not, well, it is success, it progress towards success of the project, but maybe for local definition of meeting, it might be still a failure.
I would count it as a successful meeting only in case if we actually change the purpose during the meeting. Like we see that the purpose we picked is unrealistic, we agree on the new purpose for the rest of the time, and we achieve the new purpose there. Like we can
This is
split a bigger goal to smaller goals, achieve one sub goal, still a success. Like that's totally fine when you can overestimate your preparation level or the
okay.
amount of context people need. Like that's totally okay with me. But if you don't actually voice it out and you still kind of keep pushing to the same
I
purpose and
see.
the same goal, and not achieve it by the end of the meeting, I don't qualify it as a successful meeting.
This
If
is
you
fair.
pivot into another kind of goal or purpose in the process, and you say, all right, guys, I can see that probably we are not going to achieve this goal. Let's focus on achieving this one.
Hmm.
Is it okay for you? Yeah, it's fine. Like, let's do this. And then it's like a mutually agreed new purpose.
That's fun. So we are here basically saying that as the discussion in the meeting can evolve and go to different topics, so we allow the purpose of the meeting to evolve as well. If we discover new, unknown, or not widely known information that calls for a different action, we can quote unquote repurpose the meeting and kind of go with that instead.
Absolutely. And it depends on the purpose. Like taking our podcast as an example, like our purpose is actually to get something meaningful out of the conversation. And if we see that this meaningful is not actually going according to our points, well, screw the points. Let's go to the meaning where we see it. And it's okay to get distracted from the agenda as long as we know why we are doing this. And that's an aware decision,
Mm-hmm.
something that we intentionally decided to do rather than we just happened to discuss something while we actually meant to discuss something else. And this change just appeared. It happened to us. The dynamics took us there. It was not our decision or choice.
Right. Yeah, this element of intentionality and sort of systematic approach is crucial, right? Because we cannot be kind of at random having meetings trying to generate some sort of value out of that by pure chance.
In my research of this topic, I've also bumped into a number of Holy War articles related to do this online, don't do that offline, do this only online, do this only offline. In your experience, is there any kind of things that is exclusively online or offline?
I want to say no, but maybe for a different reason. We live in a world where we need to get things done. And sometimes, even if something is not fit for online, that is on online meeting, like in Zoom, you may have no other option other than to try to make it work with Zoom. So like
I would
if
say that the best example here is a strategic session. Can you run a strategic session in Zoom with the whiteboard? You can. Like, would it be more effective if everyone got in-house and talked face to face? Absolutely. Like, is it impossible to make a proper strategy remotely? It's not impossible. You can totally nail proper decisions, agree on priorities, move on. It might take you longer. It might require a different sort of involvement and preparation, but you will probably achieve the result here and there anyway. So that's one thing. What about the this actually smaller format of like one-to-ones that have to happen intimately, or engagement of the team, or any other more magical goals that people sometimes set? Like we go to all hands meeting, like the purpose of the all hands meeting is to motivate the team. Like I have no idea how they're going to measure it afterwards,
Mhm.
but totally measurable when you see people's reactions, and it seems very unrealistic to measure when it's just icons.
I also don't necessarily buy that. It's like if we understand the goal or the purpose of why we are doing this, and then we look at the means available to us, then we figure out how to use them in the best possible way. Like similar to how we discussed a couple of episodes episodes ago, this whole chain results chain kind of a thing, right? If you want to achieve specific impact or outcome, you work back to like activities and resources that are, or like inputs or resources that are going to be needed for that. And then based on the available resources, you decide what actions you can take. Because we all have been through lockdowns and COVID and whatnot. And during that time, one might say, oh, like in order for build team engagement, kind of team building, team feel kind of thing, it's better to have people in the same room. For sure, it's better to have them in the same room, share the same slice of pizza or whatever else it might be. But if
Don't
it's
share the
not
same slice of pizza, please.
well, break. You know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, hopefully it's not the same slice. Hopefully, maybe it's the same pizza, but everyone gets their own slice to make it fair. But then when it's not available, there were other means. Like we like in my team when I moved over to London, I didn't go into office for first year or so, and still I had a great feel for the team because every week we ran the kind of fun online games which were engaging and enabled us to know each other a little bit better. Would it be better if you got in the same room? Yes, but it also would have been different than what we did online, and it still sort of worked.
So once again, here I would say that this holy war is actually irrelevant because you can achieve most of the meeting goals in both formats. It just depends on what the goal is and what formats you pick for that, like how well you prepare, how appropriately you choose something. Even such difficult things as to build the connection, sprint of connections, or to maintain the relationship. It could be a purpose of the meeting to like keep people connected. And it's still achievable online. It's achievable offline. I've seen people fail maintaining connections offline and online. So I would say that we can just strike it through. Like it's not an issue. Let's skip this and move to the next question.
Right. Maybe one thing to sum up here would be that, and I think we discussed this more than once, that it's not online versus offline that is the problem. It's just using something that works offline isn't necessarily something that would also work online. Like switching formats requires different things, like different approaches. And yeah, even if those approaches are not known yet, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't exist and we need to figure them out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jump into the next question, which is the duration of the meetings. What's your average meeting duration these days? Like, I understand it depends on the type, on the number of people, but like, if you look at your calendar, what would be the most frequent time slot size there?
The most typical is half an hour.
Half an hour. Does it actually happen for half an hour, or is it planned for half an hour, but then it goes for 40 minutes or 20 minutes?
That's a good question. I think it is planned for half an hour and then it takes half an hour because, well, there would be more than one participant and chances are some of them would have their next meeting scheduled right after that. So there is no option to continue.
What I've noticed that for the past year, most of my meetings tend to take longer because of some follow-up discussions or off topics. Even like we can achieve the goal, but then we start getting some extra steps. We discuss the execution or we get into some kind of side discussion related to something else. And then we pretty much never finish in time. And for most people, it's surprisingly okay. Previously, more people would quit. Now I can see a tendency that people plan breaks between the meetings, and sometimes they can actually meaningfully say like, all right, let's just stay a little longer and keep talking, which is just the specifics of my team. Like I by no means say that this is a macro trend or it happens everywhere, but I can totally see how people plan these risks these days. Like even the calendars, if I believe there are some methods where you can block people from getting back-to-back meetings, or you plan a 60-minute meeting but it gets like 50 minutes and 10 minutes are just free for some physical needs you might have in the process. And it does feel like a tendency to me in general to have this like spare space or slots in between.
I still wonder how effective those things are, because when you're in the meeting room or in a meeting and your calendar says that you need to, the meeting technically ends at 10 to the sharp hour, who sort of does that? Unless the person who runs the meeting pays attention to the timing and says like, no, like we have 2 minutes left. Let's
Yeah,
wrap up.
you just set up Zoom to shut down, and then it's like big red numbers coming like you have 30 seconds left.
Is this a feature really?
No, but you could definitely do
You
that.
can do that, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but do you feel that in your context, like for your type of culture, 30-minute is the optimal time for the meetings?
I think this is a multifaceted question. I think it's sort of yes, but not in a way one might expect. I think if you know that you only have 30 minutes for something, you prepare for it differently, right? It's not, you would have, especially if there are several peoples involved, you would want to have some sort of a document or something written up before that meeting, if it is a discussion or decision making meeting, or even if it is an update. You don't want to go around the room asking like, what's your update? Everything is fine. What's your update? Everything is fine. You want to know those 2-3 things that are not fine and focus the whole meeting on them, knowing that the rest is going smoothly. So you kind of prep for those meetings differently in order to take the most out of those 30 or 25 minutes that are available.
Fair enough.
I feel like maybe one of the most, say, sort of ineffective uses of that, the timing of the meeting could be that if it is a standing meeting and we did not prepare sufficiently for that standing meeting, or, like if there's a one-off meeting, then there is some person driving it and they typically would take care of preparing and making sure that like they want to achieve something, they would put effort into that. With standing meetings, there is a chance that people who are supposed to do something or provide updates, they don't, and yeah, you want to pay extra attention to warn them ahead of time that, hey, like, please don't forget to add your updates or agenda items or something.
That is fair. I also feel kind of jealous because when I checked my calendar, I have such a variety of time slots there. Like there are 15-minute meetings, there are full day events there, and it actually happens on weekly basis. Like pretty much on every day, I have different types of things. It could be half a day block for an offline event happening somewhere, then a few 15-minute calls, then a 30-minute call, then an hourly call. And they're very, very diverse depending on what's happening there. It could be a short intro call or a meaningful conversation to do something. And this kind of variety is stressful. Like I have to switch my gear all the time and change the pace, change even the small talk, like this little thing that if the meeting is more or less similar most of the time, you can already feel like we have a 45-minute weekly with our biz dev team. I totally know that 7 minutes is enough for the small talk, that everybody gets to feel comfortable, chill, relax. The meeting, like the rest of the meeting, goes comfortably and smoothly. If we take longer, then we feel pushed for time. If we take shorter, then we are too constrained. Like I can totally sense this balance. But when it's happening like new people, different setups, different durations all the time, even these small things as the little social interactions change, and your mind has to switch in the process on the fly, and it's not always effective. I could come from a very, very short meeting to a longer meeting and not change the mode from like, let's be brief, let's jump straight to business, to like, all right, how was your day? How are things happening with you? What have you been thinking about?
And also, I would say like from calendar point of view, yeah, most of my meetings are 30 minutes, but it would not be uncommon for some of the meetings to be cut short if we, yeah, is it like, okay, we decided, yeah, that's fine, let's get X minutes back and get back to work. And here I also think that this, I would imagine like everyone's calendar, at least around me, is like that. And I think it is maybe a function of that phenomenon. You may have seen those videos on YouTube or something where if you put several pendulums on the flexible platform, and you kind of start them ticking out of sync, eventually they all start ticking in sync. Because when you try to schedule a meeting with someone and they only have like 30-minute slot available, then that's the way how it's going to go. And also the meeting rooms, like people use them, and if they use them in 30-minute slots, this is like what you get into, like you start using 30-minute slots. And it typically is a challenge to get. It can be a challenge to get, let's say, even a meeting room for sufficiently big meeting room for
For
longer
sufficiently
period
big
of
slot.
for sufficiently big slot. Yes.
All right, then that is fair. Do you think if meetings get shorter, will we adapt? Like, let's say, because that's definitely a tendency. 10 years ago, meetings would be way longer than now. There is a macro trend of squeezing things into shorter period of time. If we imagine that this trend continues, do you think we'll learn how to do these things like in 10 minutes or 15 minutes?
Well, we keep saying that meeting could have been an email, and email is like 5 minutes or something. Well, I mean, reading it, maybe responding to it. Well, it can be longer as well. Yeah, I think in general we do adapt to constraints that we get, and if you cannot have an offline meeting with someone, you will still go for online meeting with them and still try to achieve what you need to achieve. Yeah, I think if we set the goal of having 15-minute meetings, we can hit that. It may be difficult depending on the circumstances. If we all work remotely and going into the next meeting only requires switching to another Zoom link, it might sort of work. But then if you are in the office situation and you need to actually physically walk with your legs to the next meeting, maybe on a different floor, 15-minute meetings might be less effective. Because yeah, if everyone is a little bit, if we are 1 minute late to that meeting, we already ate 7% of that meeting. Is that right? Is my math right? Yes.
Yeah, and then the small talk for 2 minutes.
And then a third of the meeting, 20% of a 15-minute meetings is gone.
Yep. Why I think it's a good exercise, like a thought experiment, because it kind of pushes you to the question if, by our definition, a business meeting is a gathering of people that want to achieve the purpose, then the adequate question would be, is it possible to achieve this purpose in 15 minutes? And the answer could be, no, it's not. Like, I know I've checked all the ways and it's not possible. Yes, it's totally possible I can do that. Or it may be possible, but I haven't found the way how to achieve it. And maybe there is a format or there is a way, like with proper preparation time, with some other ways around these constraints, you could still achieve the purpose. You just have never done it. Like, I mean, can you agree on something strategic for 3 hours? Why? Technically, yes. It's not very comfortable. It's not the format that we are used to, but you can make a decision, an important strategic decision in a short, limited amount of time. If it is limited for reasons, it's not like you came there for a day, then you have to make all the work in 3 hours and then chill. You are muted.
Yes, I am. Started speaking.
That's
over
another
here.
fail of meetings, by the way.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So what I was saying is that I already had this as a follow up, and I could have this as a follow up to this meeting too. I found this whole notion of results chain that we discussed several episodes ago to be kind of such a powerful framework. I now use it all the time to indicate situations where this is what we do and this is the result we want to get, and they are sort of disconnected, that there are steps in between, and we need to understand that and kind of do not expect that if you schedule a meeting immediately a decision will be made. Like, there are steps in between, and it kind of goes both ways. Like, depending on what we are trying to achieve, looking at the means available to us, we might take a different route. We might take different action that has a decent chance of getting us where we need to get, if something that arguably could be a better option isn't available. Same, but with meetings.
Sounds true. Let's try talking about the statistics, estimated statistics of your execution on the action items. Let's say you go to 10 meetings a week, maybe 20, maybe. It doesn't really matter how many. And you get X amount of action items from these meetings. In your experience, how many of them will be done, complete, achieved
I refuse to
within
answer.
planned amount of time, whatever this time is?
It's difficult to estimate it this way because sometimes the action item could be look deeper into X and figure out what's going on there.
Absolutely. But I mean, like, you intend to do an action and you do this action when you intend. Like, you might not get the result you expect from this action and it doesn't provide the impact you hoped it would, but still, like, you did the thing or you didn't do the thing.
I don't know. I don't have like ready-made statistics, and I'm cognizant of bias to make myself look not too bad on this in this conversation.
Okay,
I don't know.
I may answer this question first. Like, my statistics is in between 30 and 40% of things.
How did you measure that?
I do have the follow-ups. Like, I actually took some time and I calculated the number. Like, I looked through the follow-ups from my entire week. Mm-hmm. And they're usually a deadline and the action item itself.
All right, yeah,
and I checked whether these action items happened within these deadlines or not. And it indicates that my schedule is too hectic. Like, I get too many incoming things and I have to push and postpone a number of things. And I normally get only like 30 to 40% done in time. I do eventually get it done, but not when I plan it initially. So my time estimates should be way more pessimistic.
I don't know. I don't think I have such a rigorous system of tracking that. So if anything, my rate could be similar to yours, but also I'm at least presently making cognizant effort of not taking on too many action items and be specific. Or am I doing this or someone else doing that?
Why it actually was way easier than probably it is for you, because I do use the Sidekick notepad from Cortex, and they have this like action item section, and I just kept pages for a few weeks as I was thinking about this thing, just to see what action items I do put in. I don't write them down straight into the task manager or somewhere, because there it would be very difficult to see when it was created, when it got in, when it was deadlined, and how it went. But when you actually see, like, all right, within these 3 weeks, this is what I got from the meetings, and you can check whether it happened within the timeline or not.
Yeah, that's fair. And one thing which probably made answering this question for me a little bit more challenging is that as not necessarily follow-ups to the meetings, but as a result of having a meeting, I would have ideas to what I could kind of do or explore, like specifically that kind of to pursue my own kind of ideas or goals or whatever it might be based on the information from that meeting, which would not necessarily be a formal follow-up to that meeting, but I would put a note to myself. I probably should check XYZ. And if I account for those things as well, yeah, then I would definitely not expect the rate to be higher than, let's say, 50% of for actually following up on all of those items that I internally may consider to be an action items coming out of a meeting.
Fair enough. Or as one of our friends used to say, good stuff.
Good stuff. Who was that friend though?
Let's round it up with one final question. If, in your opinion, there could be one radical change like that most people would take that would instantly improve the meeting productivity, let's say we all sign a contract that from this day, this is going to happen. What would be this to bring the most impact to the meeting management?
So you made it so specific, as in like specific thing everyone signs up to do.
Like, bring in your pet. Like, everyone agrees to bring in their pets to the meetings, and then from this mayhem. Day, yeah, but that's the opposite example. Please don't do that.
Well, I don't know. I'm a little bit conflicted between kind of explicitly capturing action items and kind of follow-ups, and writing some sort of a document so that people, or enable people to come prepared to the meeting, so that they understand the purpose of the goal and they have all the kind of resources available to them to fulfill that purpose in the meeting.
Man, you're way more systematic than I am, because what I had in mind thinking about this question was just one thing: to be able to name the goal.
Well,
so instead of the name, the title, or something in the calendar, there would be like to do something, like to decide on this, to discuss that, to choose this.
I think that matches one of the items which I formulated it slightly differently.
But like I adore how massive your change is. Like it does sound like an entire culture shift. Like guys,
but no, you get what you ask for,
absolutely,
right? If
absolutely.
you're asking for a specific thing that people should start be doing, I'm as an engineer start thinking about like be precise and specific about what people
I totally
should.
take the full responsibility for like the blame is all on me, because I was hoping for something pinpointed, but if you actually put a constraint, you never know what the impact would be. So this is what I get.
This whole kind of the whole last kind of exchange that we had like, illustrates that people think differently and they kind of see the same things slightly differently in slightly different light. So being explicit about what we are here to do is going to be super.
So will my next meeting fail? But chances are it will. And it's still going to be a good meeting.
Yeah, it's still going to be a good week despite failing meetings.
Well, see you later in the next one.
Take care.